Hey guys, it's Madison Estes. Welcome to my channel. And yes, that is a dog bed. My dogs are spoiled. Anyways, today I'm doing a 24-hour Bizarro Readathon. I have had these books on my to-be-read list for way too long, and I've just had a really stressful week last week, and all I want to do today is read, so that's what I'm going to do. The first book on my reading list is Bodies, A Romantic Bloodbath by Moses Yuriyvich Mikheyev. I got this book from NetGalley and I knew absolutely nothing about it except for the summary. It's about a guy who masters cloning and he ends up replacing a girl that he was dating in order to make her a more perfect version of herself, and he seems to kind of get carried away with it. It seems like it's going to be like a mad scientist story. I'm only 20% of the way into this book and I'm already getting serious Bizarro vibes from it. Every chapter, the book veers off in a direction that I wasn't expecting, and there are just these really strange twists in it, so I'm considering it a Bizarro book for now. I haven't heard this author's name mentioned in like Bizarro communities, so I don't know if it's technically Bizarro or if the author maybe is writing a Bizarro novel but doesn't know it, so they're not marketing it that way. But for now, and for the purposes of this video, I'm considering it a Bizarro novel. The second book I'm going to be reading today is The Vine That Ate the Starlet by Madeleine Swann. This story is about a dinner party guest that ends up being killed by murderous vines. I am absolutely in love with this premise. I loved the movie The Ruins, and I just can't get enough plant monster horror, so I'm really excited to read this story. So the last story I'm going to be reading today is Caught by Lacie DeMilo. It's actually not a Bizarro story, it's an erotica story. I kind of figured 2 Bizarro books back to back, that's about as much strangeness as I can handle in one day. This story is about a wife who's married to a cop, and then they get into some steamy situations. I don't know any more than that, so that's going to be an interesting surprise. I actually won this story in a giveaway on Instagram, which I didn't even know I was entering the giveaway, but I did. Apparently, it was one of those giveaways where if you just like the post, you're automatically entered into it, and I am one of the people who like the post. I guess I was just like scrolling and liking things and didn't realize I'd entered a giveaway, so that was interesting. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started reading Bodies. Like I said, I'm already about 20% of the way through with this story, and I'm really hoping that Vince comes back into the story soon, or that they'll reveal how this new character and Vince are connected, because I'm starting to lose a little bit of interest now that Vince is no longer in the story, but hopefully they'll bring him back soon and I can finish the story and tell you guys what I think about it. And as you can see, I have my 2 reading buddies with me, so even if this story doesn't end up being as good as I think it is, at least I'm getting some quality time with the dogs. Okay, and just a side note before I get started, I absolutely love the cover to this book. So this is another reason why I have high hopes for this. I forgot to mention the first chapter of this book is a trash fire. The thing that I hate most about it is the fact that the character motivation is inconsistent. So Melissa dumps her boyfriend and she tells her mom that she did it to kind of test him to see if he'll fight for her. But her best friend seems to be under the impression that he did something wrong and needs to be punished. So that was really confusing. And then it was also really confusing that Vincent is planning on murdering her and her friend in the first chapter, so this isn't like a major spoiler. But he's planning on murdering Melissa and her friend and then replacing them with clones, and yet after he kills Melissa, he starts crying and saying, "I'll fix it, I can fix you," and it makes it seem as if he's deciding in that moment that he's going to clone her rather than that being the plan all along. So that was kind of confusing. I almost stopped reading it, honestly, at that point because I was so frustrated with just the bad writing and the lack of logic and consistency. But then the second chapter was really good, and I've been really into it up until this point where they kind of switched the point of view characters. So I'm a little bit concerned about that because the first chapter was really bad, but everything since then has been much better, and there's been logical character motivation since then. The internal logic seems to be fairly stable. Again, it's a little bit weird, which is why I'm kind of thinking this might be at least within the realm of Bizarro or in the realm of weird fiction. But again, it's kind of hard to tell if that's at this point, if that's just inconsistent writing or if it's meant to be kind of strange. So we'll see. I'll tell you guys my thoughts in a little bit. Okay, so I just hit the halfway point, and so far the most terrifying thing in this novel is that this rich couple and their daughter go into this fancy restaurant and they order their steaks well done and medium rare, which to me, as a Texan, I find borderline offensive. So the story has connected Vincent's character with this new character, Leo, but unfortunately there has been a huge time jump between part 1 and part 2, which is partly why I was a little bit confused, and it's just not doing it for me. I'm thinking I'm probably going to skim the next few chapters because I'm starting to get bored. There is some really interesting world building, but unfortunately the world building seems to be mostly backstory and it doesn't seem to be affecting the current plot right now, so it's kind of disappointing. I mean, this idea is so interesting and there was so much potential, but I just feel like it's not utilizing any of the ideas that it's introducing into the story. I am going to go ahead and finish reading it because I'm halfway through and I do want to know what happens next or how the story ends. I am invested in some of the characters, although I'm still mostly invested in Vince, even though he is an awful person. He's the most compelling character in the story, and I kind of wish that they would bring him back into the story instead of just talking about him and his invention. You know, we spent 4 chapters with him at the beginning, and he is the most compelling character, and these new characters just aren't doing it for me. They seem like just stereotypical teenagers, and it's kind of boring, and I really want to get back into Vince's head, or at least get him back into the story and see his character from another character's point of view. So hopefully they'll bring him back soon, and I will get more interested in this story again. I'm gonna go ahead and finish it. Okay, so I just finished reading Bodies, and okay, where do I start with this book? It did get really interesting again whenever we find out the connection between Leo, Vince, and all the other characters. But man, this book is a mess. Like, oh, where do I start? Even now, after I've read the book, I would have trouble pinpointing exactly where the climax of this story is. It does kind of have a somewhat satisfying resolution because the character Leo, he ends up being separated from his true love, and then he kind of ends up getting her back in the end in a way that's a little bit unconventional, or at least there's the promise that he might be getting her back again. So it does kind of have a satisfying character arc for that one character, but overall the story is just kind of a mess, and I'm not even entirely sure how I would even explain this storyline. I'm also not entirely sure it was bizarro like I thought it was. The first 4 chapters really felt that way, but then the tone shifted after we got into Leo's perspectives. But that's not a problem with the book itself, that's just kind of a problem with where I thought the book was going, or what I thought the book was going to be like. But yeah, the fact that the plot is just so all over the place that I'm not even sure how I could describe what actually happened or what the main focus was supposed to be is a big problem. The other thing is that there were so many storylines that just were kind of dropped, like I think could be considered aborted arcs. For instance, the character Leo, they're having trouble cloning him for some reason, and I was thinking, well, maybe Leo will already be a clone, even though they're able to clone clones of clones. That's a big part of the story, but maybe he's already a clone and they did something to his DNA so that he couldn't be cloned again. Like, that would have been interesting. But no, we never find out why they were having trouble cloning him, and that never is resolved for some reason. One of the storylines in here was going to involve them killing Leo and Sarah, the 2 of the main characters, and then replacing them with clones, but they were never able to figure out how to clone Leo, and yet once they think Leo's dead, that never comes up again. So it's definitely a huge plot hole that's never addressed, and it really bugged me that they never addressed that. It just feels like, why even bring up the fact that Leo, you're having trouble cloning him if you're not going to mention it ever again in the story, and if it's not going to play a part in the story later on. And then they acted like it wasn't a problem whenever it was a problem. So I really think that this was just an aborted arc. I think that this was something that the writer thought they were going to put in the story and just forgot to take out. So that was really frustrating. Another thing that really frustrates me is that once Leo knows that some very powerful people are after him, and that he literally says in the book, I knew I was going to be the next body. So he knows powerful people want to kill him. He ends up going on a date with Sarah instead of, I don't know, trying to go into hiding, trying to attack the bad people first, telling his parents, getting police involved. So many things he could have done. And he decides to go on a date with Sarah, and even in the chapter, it doesn't say anything about him being concerned about these people that are after him. Just going on a date like nothing's wrong, and that is so infuriating as a reader that he's just ignoring this. And it's so out of character too. It doesn't seem like something he would do. So that was just a very frustrating scene. And the fact that they end up getting into a car accident, and that sort of ends up being like, that solves the problem of what Vincent wanted to do, because he wanted to kill those two characters, instead of just making it be that they were attacked by the people that are trying to kill them. You know, it was just a really weird coincidence that they just happened to get into a car accident. And it's not like it was secretly sabotage. Like, it genuinely is a car accident. I'm like, why would you put an accident into the story when you had a perfectly good reason to have them be murdered? It just doesn't make any sense at all. It's a sign of very poor writing, especially when you throw in a coincidence in the third act and there's no reason for the coincidence, and you could have very easily have made that an intentional decision from another character that has a motivation to kill that character. But you just make it a coincidence just because. Bad writing. There's a lot of really good ideas in this story, though. I really love the world building that went into it. The idea of like the southern states rejecting the idea of cloning because they think that it's not biblical. I think that's something that would really happen if cloning was made mainstream like it is in this book. So that was really interesting, and I really felt like all the political elements, even though they weren't as closely tied into the main story as I think they should have been, were still really interesting to read about, and it made this story feel a lot more realistic than it otherwise would have. I also started to really like Sarah and Leo's characters. They did finally start to grow on me after we spent some time with them, even though I kind of felt like their storyline overall wasn't as interesting as Vince's storyline in the first 4 chapters, but I did like those characters, so that's another thing I liked about the book, even if they did make really stupid choices sometimes. So yeah, overall, it's really hard for me to rate this book because the things that I didn't like, I strongly don't like them. Yeah, I don't know, I guess I would give it a 2.5 out of 5 stars. Like, it's not quite 3 stars. I can't quite recommend this book to others. Yeah, I don't know, it's just hard for me to decide. There's definitely some good things in this story. It just feels like it really badly needed one more edit. Not proofreading edits. I didn't find any grammatical mistakes, but it needed one more developmental edit, I think, to kind of streamline the story, make the storylines connect a little bit more, and get rid of all the plot holes, just pave over those plot holes. Yeah, because there was quite a few things that really irked me at the end of the book. From, you know, poor planning, like I said, the third act coincidence that didn't need to be a coincidence, that could have very easily been an act of sabotage, which would have been made a lot more sense in the story, to just, you know, having the characters make better decisions and feel more in character. Like, there's no tension whenever your character decides to go on a date, especially in a scene that's at least, if not the climax, at least like a scene leading up to the climax. Again, it's even hard for me to say what the climax is because the main storyline is just kind of all over the place, but you know, if your character feels comfortable enough to go on a date with his girl instead of, you know, fleeing from these bad people, it really removes a lot of the tension from the story. So yeah, I had some major problems with the third act, but other than that, it was okay. I can't really say I would recommend reading this book, but if you like this idea of cloning and the synopsis is interesting to you, I guess check it out. I don't know. I can't make these decisions for you. All I can do is just tell you my thoughts on it. And my thoughts are that it really needed one more edit. So since it is almost 6 o'clock, I'm gonna go take a break. I'm gonna get something to eat, go walk the dogs, and then I'm gonna come back and read The Vine That Ate the Starlet. So it is 8 o'clock. I have no idea how it got to be that late. I just walked Leo, made dinner, ate, and watched an episode of Last Week Tonight. I don't know how that equaled 2 hours, but here we are. I'm about to start reading The Vine That Ate the Starlet, and I'll let you guys know what I think. Okay, so I finished reading The Vine That Ate the Starlet. I liked this story much better than Bodies. For one thing, there's just much better world building. The story felt consistent throughout. The tone was consistent. It just felt a lot more cohesive than the last book that I read. The only thing that I didn't like was that I felt like the characters were a little bit flat, so I'm more tempted to give this 4 stars. My overall rating is probably 4 stars out of 5. I felt like if the characters had been fleshed out a little bit better, it would be leaning towards 5 stars, but as it is, the characters are just a little bit flat. It's a very plot-centric story. I really liked that there was no exposition dump. There was no, here's the history of how the vines came to be. They were just there in the story. And so I thought that was really well done and interesting, and I like that it wasn't like this long explanation as to why there are murderous vines in the city. They just are. But again, I would have liked a little bit more character development. So 4 out of 5 stars. Overall, I'm a lot happier with that story, and I really enjoyed reading it. So I just read Caught, and it was a lot shorter than I thought it was going to be, and I finished it. I kind of skimmed the last part because some of it was kind of cringy and I just didn't want to read it word for word. And I'm not really sure how to rank it because it's not really a story. It's more of like a scene. And it's a scene where we don't have a lot of context and we don't really understand the characters' relationships. It's pretty much just a sex scene. So yeah, I'm not really sure how to rank this. I think I'm just not going to rank this at all. But yeah, but it is smutty. It is steamy and kinky. So yeah, I'll give it that. So that's all the reading I'm going to do today. It's like 10:30, so I'm probably just going to work out and go to bed. And well, hello. Thank you for coming along with me on my readathon. I had a lot of fun today. Really, really loved the plant story. That was definitely my favorite, and I'm definitely going to check out more work from her. But yeah, just thank you so much for coming along with me, and I would encourage you to have your own readathon day because this was really awesome. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. On this channel, I post book reviews, writing advice, and horror commentary. I've also recently started posting vlogs like this one, so if you liked it, please subscribe. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you later.